Everyone should know by now that you can use a small timing window to soft reset a Pokemon den. That if you're fast enough and you beat out the save, you can see what Pokemon is spawning, and then you can choose if you want it or not. For example, Ditto can only spawn in purple beams in this den, so I'm going to keep going until I get a purple one if I'm looking for Ditto. But did you know that effectively the same idea is possible when it comes to Pokemon eggs? It's kind of wild, and I think the best way is just showing you guys how it's done and the shenanigans that are going on here. So, let's take a TM. If you take a TM, try to teach it to an egg, it won't have any effect. Try to give it to a Pokemon, and it's not compatible, it's not compatible. But what happens if you take a Pokemon that is compatible, and you do it really quick? That's our egg. Ditto can't learn Tailwind, Hurricane, Defog. It even says egg as the name, and it's my level 1 Noibat. And we can see all of its stats and its abilities. This is insane. So you can teach TMs to a Pokemon egg. And there's a lot of value in that. You can see what nature the Pokemon has, you can see if it has the right IVs and stuff, and it's just done by moving it really quick. So what you want to do is you want to press the A button, and then move to the egg really fast. Kind of like using that timing window and then having some crazy stuff happen. So you're bypassing whatever check doesn't work with the egg. Now, one thing that's really good about this is that you cannot take a move that a Pokemon can't learn and then try to pass it off. So it's like, oh, Meowth can learn it, Noibat can't learn Body Slam, but it still says that they are incompatible. So this is good. This means that people aren't going to be running around with Pokemon with illegal movesets that they got inside the game. However, if you could, it would still be against the rules because the Pokemon can only know moves through its natural learn set. And also, I've been seeing some weird things going around where people are evolving the Pokemon inside of the egg. So you can hatch like a level 1 Rillaboom or something crazy like that, but don't do it. Because then that's when the game is going to flag it as an illegitimate Pokemon. So don't mess with anything inside the egg. However, this method is not cheating, it's not hacking, it's not modification of any way. That's why I don't understand. People are like, oh, it's cheating to turn your game on and off, or oh, it's hacking to change the clock inside your game. No, there's no modification going on, there's no third-party software. This isn't cheat. How is this cheating? I'm looking at the stats of the egg, and I'm not changing anything that the game would see as illegitimate. The key thing here is that glitches and exploits are not inherently cheating, it's what you do with it. If you use a glitch or an exploit to create a Pokemon that doesn't have a natural moveset, or hatching an evolved Pokemon, or doing something that just shouldn't happen inside the game, then that's when the Pokemon doesn't become legitimate, and it's probably going to be flagged by hack check anyways. But I don't see how anyone that's a sane person sees looking at these stats and calls this cheating when anyone has access to this, because that's another thing. When it comes to the RNG method, you need third-party software that's disseminating game data that you're not supposed to know to get the RNG seed to then exploit the game that way. That's not allowed. When it comes to the trade cloning glitch that we saw in previous generations, even though anyone could do that, that's cheating because the Pokemon Company says so. So cloning isn't allowed, RNG isn't allowed, but changing the clock and then turning your game off and on, that's allowed. And then this doesn't give me any kind of obscene advantage on the same level as RNG or cloning, so I don't understand why there would be any problem with this, but idiots are going to be idiots, and there's still a few other weird things that are going on here. So if I tried to give the egg an item, so we have this, eggs can't hold items. So it kinda works, but I could also use the ability capsule on this egg, and then have a successful ability capsule usage. It's kinda weird. What? So we can see a few things about a Pokemon egg before it hatches, but what does that do for us? I think the biggest thing is going to be we can see the hidden ability of the Pokemon before it ends up hatching, and that's going to be amazing for shiny hunting. That if you are not just going for any kind of shiny Pokemon, like the shiny Pokemon doesn't matter, but the competitive shiny Pokemon matters, then that means you can make it to where you're only hatching and or obtaining eggs that have hidden abilities inside of them. Because if you hatch a Pokemon and it doesn't have the hidden ability, there's nothing you can do about that. An ability capsule will never just create a hidden ability, and then there's also going to be like a decent chance depending on how you're breeding it. If you have a female Pokemon with a hidden ability, you're breeding with a male Pokemon different species, that's the way that you can get the hidden ability hidden inheritance, or a male Pokemon with a Ditto, and that kind of brings in some other complications. So the way that this method works in the easiest, most efficient way is if the Pokemon already knows 4 moves. Otherwise, you have to teach it a TM through this method, and then teach another TM through this method until it can actually forget a move. So certain Pokemon, they're going to have all their moves at level 1 when they hatch. but that means we'd have to teach this Noibat 2 moves and then a third move to be able to see the information inside of it. So having those egg moves is really going to be helpful, even if you don't plan on using those egg moves competitively, because it means you're going to be able to check the eggs a lot faster, and then any combination of egg moves in level 1 to get the Pokemon to hatch with 4 moves, that's all that you really need to do this. There's another interesting thing as well, that this is for breeding with a Ditto, but if you're breeding with these same species of Pokemon, as long as they both know the same moves, that egg will have the moves inside of it. So I caught a level 60 Noibat in the wild, and I caught another level 60 Noibat in the wild. One male, one female, and that's why the moveset looks like it does when we try to use a TM on it, because they have the same moveset since they're the same level and the same species of Pokemon. So that's gonna be good, but it's not gonna be good for shinies, because for shinies, you need like a Japanese Ditto, not 6IV, because that's cheating. I also don't understand the hype around the 6IV Japanese Ditto anyways, because even with a 6IV Japanese Ditto, your shiny Pokemon isn't always going to hatch perfectly competitive, it just increases the chance. So most likely you're still going to need to max level it with candies and then use hyper training to get a competitive shiny Pokemon that you're looking for, so any foreign Ditto is just as good. But what about shiny swapping? Is that still inside Pokemon Sword and Shield? So we have to go way back 3 years to this crazy method. So what happens is that the eggs in Pokemon Sun and Moon were determined very far in advance. So what you want to do is you want to breed with a Magikarp, because Magikarp has the lowest egg cycles for hatching a Pokemon. What you're doing is racing to that shiny Pokemon super fast while saving along the way, and then when you hatch a shiny Magikarp, you reset your game, and then you swap the Magikarp out for another Pokemon, as long as you are like keeping the Ditto consistent, and then you can determine which Pokemon is going to hatch shiny. So a method of breeding that exploits a quirk in Pokemon Sun and Moon's egg generation that predetermines your eggs very far in advance. Their nature, gender roles, ability roles, which parent they inherited IVs from, and whether or not they're shiny will be exactly the same despite the species changing. So a big question is, does this apply in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and can we actually use this egg peeking feature? Do we call it egg peeking? I don't know what we're going to call it. We can use this egg peeking to determine if the Pokemon is going to be shiny or if it's going to have better IVs or something like that, and then can we use that to manipulate shiny Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield? Well, here's the thing. If she already has her hand to her head like this, that Pokemon will always be the same no matter what. Now, if she doesn't have an egg, what you want to do is save your game and then just kind of keep cycling until an egg generates. So, I've learned a few things. That you can't save like one step before the egg generates and then grab it and then reset the game and then kind of do it perpetually like that. It doesn't work. So, it's going to be different egg cycles every time for the Pokemon to generate. But when she does have an egg for you, now we just do the egg peeking method and we see if this Pokemon is a desirable Pokemon. I think this is going to be the best thing for shiny hunters that are going for hidden abilities, because you can see the ability of the Pokemon. So then we go something like the acrobatics, boop, and so now we can see what's going on with this Pokemon, and in theory, we could actually determine this Pokemon's IVs as well. So the defense is at a 4, and defense here is at a 5, so this means we probably have like one of the lowest possible defenses, or a minus defensive nature. I don't have Everstone on, so depending on like if you're Everstone breeding, which is the way you guaranteed natures, or if you're just kind of doing some kind of like random shiny toss out or something, you can see what the Pokemon's nature is going to be through the stats, the IVs and stuff like that. Some Pokemon are going to be better than others though, so if we have 29, 30. So at a 35 base stat, we can pretty much tell if the Pokemon has 31 IVs or not inside of the egg, and then we can see which IVs inherited off of the Destiny Knot. But there's something like 40 base stat, you need to have a 19, and then it becomes 6. So there's really no difference for a lot of these, and then 55 base speed will always be 6. So there are going to be some problems and inconsistencies. I don't think it's worth checking the IVs beforehand because of hyper training, and like I said, the IVs probably aren't going to inherit anyways, so the best thing is just going to be checking the nature and then seeing if that's going to work. However, what about the swap method? Are we able to save the game at a point, generate eggs, and then get different eggs to spawn and stuff? Well, let's say I didn't like that one, I reset the game. The Pokemon is actually going to be different. So here we have a new egg from the nursery worker. I just soft reset, I went into it, and now we have 5 on the defense, so we can see that we got a completely different role for this Pokemon. Actually, it has 5 on the speed, which tells us it's a speed hindering nature instead of a defensive hindering nature for this Noibat. So what this means is that the shiny swapping method does not work in Pokemon Sword and Shield. It is fresh RNG every time you generate an egg. However, this seems like it's going to be faster than hatching a bunch of Pokemon, having like a lot of eggs to deal with and stuff like that. So even if you're just like resetting for each individual egg to check the hidden ability and then Saving afterwards, I guess, kind of gets messy. I still think that this is going to be a faster way of getting specific Pokemon that you're looking for and then trying to hatch the exact Pokemon that you want. As you see, like, that's not really taking too long. So in the time it would take to get the eggs, get the wrong eggs, run back and forth, hatch it, and then check the Pokemon that way, you can check it this way, and then if you don't like it, you soft reset, you save when you have one good desirable egg, and then you go for the shiny. But what about looking for a shiny Pokemon? Well, we do have a problem with that, because if I had a shiny Pokemon and I teach it a TM, there is no way of seeing if that Pokemon is shiny. So, if we did this, there's no shiny indicator. It's not like there's a red star next to Noibat's name or something like that. This is the only page we get. So when it comes to the shiny Pokemon, those are going to be on the main stat page. So let's just go and check out Ditto, or really any of our Pokemon. So right here, this is where the Pokemon would be shiny. There's the Dynamax symbol above the held item, and then to the left of that, there'd be a shiny Pokemon. And even though we can check the summary of an egg, it doesn't really give us too much information. No name, no OT, no ID number, no experience points, and it doesn't even tell us the species of Pokemon it's going to hatch. So if there was a way to get to this screen on the egg peak and then find the Pokemon inside of it, that would be busted for shiny hunting. If that method comes out, then yeah, that gets pretty insane. But as it stands right now, this isn't really going to do too much for us, and that's why egg peeking is so important. So here's what it would look like if the Pokemon is shiny. Now we can't see the Pokemon inside the egg, we can't do anything with this TM method that would allow us to see it, so that'd also be really busted. If you receive an egg, you check it, see if it's shiny or not, and then you reset, and then you keep doing that. So in theory, this method could work because shiny swapping doesn't exist, but we can't see that the Pokemon's shiny in any way. We just get to see the stats, the nature, and the moves that it already knows, and because of inheritance, we would already know those moves anyway, so there shouldn't really be any surprises. And that's kind of all that we can really get out of this one, so tell me what you guys think. Do you think this is a good method for hatching Pokemon? Like, do you think it's a faster method, at least for getting the exact Pokemon you want? Whether it's nature, potentially stats based on the IVs and stuff like that. Like, breeding has become quite a lot easier. I just think it's interesting. I think it's interesting that we can teach an egg moves beforehand and see what the egg is up to. And if you are specifically going for hidden ability shiny Pokemon and getting like those other shinies is just like rejects doesn't matter to you, then this is probably the way to go. I want to know what you guys think about that as well. So if you guys enjoy the video, hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.